But thank you guys for coming. Thank you guys for attending our first 2021 Creator Talks. For those of you unfamiliar with me, here's another friend. For those of you unfamiliar with me, my name is Megan. I teach in the second year, and Creator Talks is something we started in 2019. And the focus of this speaker series is less about how to do the art and more how to make a career out of it. And that's why I'm so thrilled to have Steenz today talking about the business of freelancing. To introduce Steenz. Steenz is a St. Louis-based cartoonist, editor, and professor. They are the cartoonist for the syndicated comic strip Heart of the City. They're also the co-creator of Archival Quality, a graphic novel and winner of the Dwayne McDuffie Award. And they are also featured in short story anthologies such as Eisner and Ignatz award-winning Elements, Fire, Mine, and Deadbeats. Steenz launched and edited the popular RPG periodical Rolled and Told, which is how I met them. They participate in and create community building comics related programming. They're also a frequent panelist at Comic-Cons. Steenz currently teaches cartooning at Webster University while editing for Mad Cave Studios. And so without further ado, I'm so excited for this talk, and I'm so excited we were able to have Steenz here. So I will leave the floor to them. If you would like to have your camera on, you are free to. I would kindly ask everyone to keep their microphones off unless asked to. So take it over.
All right. Thank you for the great introduction. Yes, I did find Megan for Rolled and Told. And I think the first thing you asked me when we met in person the first time was, how did you know who I was? And I was like, to be fair, I didn't. I just saw your art and I was like, okay, well, great. Let's ask if they're interested, you know? So really good job on making sure your art got to the right eyes by just continuing to put art out there.
So far, so good.
Yeah. So hello. Let me share my screen so that you can see my presentation. You know, I feel like I've made more PowerPoints like outside of school than I have ever made in school. And honestly, they're like the same PowerPoint over and over again with like multiple things changed depending on who I'm speaking to. So if you see anything on there that says, thanks for listening, Lindenwood University or something, no, you didn't. Okay, so I am Steenz. I'm a cartoonist, editor, and educator. Oftentimes I like to start off with talking about my career trajectory because a lot of times people think that right after you get out of school, the first thing you need to do is get a paid job in the field that you want and live off of that. And that is a myth. I don't know anyone that's done that. And I know quite a lot of people. It's just, you know, it's not realistic, you know, especially considering the industry that we're in. You know, it is the comics industry. So, but let me start from the beginning. But I went to high school. I took all the art classes that were ever available to me. I was drawing fan art all the time. I was definitely one of those people that like made live journal like banners for different ships. And I learned a lot about Photoshop, putting those, you know, characters together for your profile pictures. All hilarious things to do when you're a teenager, but works out really well because you are learning a skill, you know? So after high school, I went to Maryville University and I went for studio art. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my art. I just knew that I liked drawing. And like, that's kind of how it is with a lot of art-focused careers is people see that, oh, okay, you draw. So let's either put you in graphic design, interior design, or gallery artist. And there's really far more things you can do that aren't just those three. And unfortunately, my college experience did not tell me about all the other things that you can do with your career, you know? And so as I was getting a lot of great skills, figure drawing, painting, you know, I even did like my own study period where I worked on a graphic novel. It felt like it was too much self-motivation for me to continue paying out the ass for it. So I left. But after I dropped out, I was like, well, I got to start making money because I'm not just going to live with my mother for the rest of my life. So I started working at Victoria's Secret, which, you know, I can give you a bra fitting. I can show you how to wear makeup, all good skills. But as I was working at Victoria's Secret, I was still doing sort of like slice of life, funny comics or fan art illustrations, still no idea what I was going to do with it. It wasn't until I started working at Star Clipper, which was the comic book store that I eventually managed, is where I found a group of people who were also making comics. And it was a local group, and they did a program called Ink and Drink Comics, where every season they put out a different anthology of comics based on that genre. And so none of us got paid for it. All the money we made from selling the books at local conventions went into producing the next book. So it's a really great opportunity for me to learn how to work with others, to learn how to work with an editor, preparing my pages for digital printing. All of that stuff I was able to learn in that completely free, moneyless job. But I learned quite a bit from it, and I was doing that while I was working at Star Clipper, which is great because I had a roof over my head and I had food in my belly, and I was still working on stuff that even if I wasn't making any money from my art, I was still making that art. And that art led me to be able to do other kinds of comics. So when I left the comic book store, I started working at St. Louis Public Library. I was a librarian for about 2 years. I really focused on expanding their graphic novel memoir collection. I also helped build their zine library, which is exciting to have a zine library that you can actually take out of the library, putting that into circulation. And while I was doing that, my creative partner, Ivy, and I were like, okay, well, we want to put together this web comic. Let's just do it because the entry level to web comics is rather low, So we were like, okay, well, let's make this web comic. And then Oni Press opened up for open submissions. And we were like, okay, we kind of have an in that Ivy's husband is homies with one of the people at Oni. So maybe we can get our pitch in earlier than everybody else. So that is what I like to call luck. But we sent it in and we knew if we don't get picked up, we're just going to put it online anyway. So there's really nothing to lose here. I mean, maybe our feelings will get hurt if they decide they don't want it. And so we ended up getting picked, which is a huge deal, my very first book deal. I also didn't know anyone locally that had gotten a book deal from a major publisher like that. I didn't know anyone personally, because at that point in time, I was very into the webcomic scene. So the publishing side, I wasn't very knowledgeable about, which is why I took such a shitty advance. So, some advances aren't great, but I still think about it as a very positive experience because I learned more about the comic book creation, more from doing that comic book than I had on my own self-taught process or whatever I learned in college. So after I got my first book deal, I kept doing more projects, more anthologies, more short comics. And so I was continuing to make my work worthwhile. And again, I was not working full time as an artist. At that point in time, when I joined Lion Forge is when I was still making money in the comics area, but it wasn't from the comics that I was personally making. And that didn't bother me because my goals in life are less so about comic creation and more so about community and making sure that new creators get to step into the industry more easily than I did, So I was like, this is it. I'm happy with this. I could be an editor for the rest of my life and just do my comics on the side. I'm happy. And then of course I got fired, not because I was bad at anything. I was really one of the best ones there. No, this is what happens when, publishing, people purchase companies and mergers happen and people get lost in the wayside. And so I was kind of forced into freelance. And instead of, I was still applying for editorial jobs, but I found that it's possible for me to make the kind of money that I was making just doing the stuff that I do. So I started off with talking to my mentor because I was like, how am I supposed to get an editing job at a traditional publisher when all they seem to want are people who have worked at other traditional publishers. It's like I have a huge background in editing comics. I've been doing that for years, and it doesn't seem to matter to anybody because I wasn't working at Scholastic. And so she told me, you know, like, instead of thinking about that job title, think about what you want to do with your life. I want to make comics. I want to help others visualize their comics and get it out the door. So I want to keep editing comics, and I want to still do what I do with my community. I want to make sure that I'm still educating people to get into the community. And she was like, well, then that's what you should be doing. You know, you don't need to have a single job title in order to do that, which is why all of my presentations start with cartoonist, editor, and professor, because I am all three of those. So, as you know, I was still working on my craft, still making comics, still putting out stuff. And while I was freelance, I was approached by the editor at Andrews McNeil Syndication. And they were like, hey, do you want to draw some strip comics? And I was like, I mean, you know, I read strip comics, tell me more. And so I auditioned for the gig. It was a very long audition process, which we can talk about later. And eventually I got in. I got the gig. So that's where I am currently. I have, you know, Heart of the City, which I do full time. I also edit comics for Mad Cave Studios, who reached out to me. They were like, hey, I see you edit. Maybe you edit our stuff. And I was like, tell me more. And so they did, and I got the gig. And then for the professorship, that is another thing that was luck, because one of the guys that was in Ink and Drink Comics, remember I was telling you about the local group that made those comics? One of those guys happens to work at Webster University, and he had gotten a promotion to be head of the animation department. And so he needed someone to teach one of his classes that he could no longer teach, which was his cartooning course. And he was like, do you want to teach it? And I was like, yes. I mean, I don't have any background in teaching college level. And he was like, actually, it's really all about following a syllabus that we've kind of all been using, so you can alter it to whatever you feel is better. And then also having the experience of making comics, which I have plenty of. So I was like, okay, well then I'll do it. And so that's where I am now. But I always say to people that, you know, every single thing you do leads you to where you're going to be in the future. So try not to worry about knowing what are the correct things you're supposed to say yes or what you're supposed to say no to, because, you know, you don't have to step on every stepping stone to get to where you go. You can say no to projects, you know? So that's what I like to make sure that people understand, is to just, you know, try your best, have fun. And if something seems interesting to you, give it a try, because you never know where it could lead you. So this is my portfolio. I do a lot of colorful drawings. I like fan art. I like doing portraiture. I like drawing my cat. I like doing creepy stuff. I like doing character reimaginations. This is my version of Bulma from Dragon Ball. I do all sorts of stuff that I just try and keep making content, because it helps with getting better at your craft, you know? All the kind of comics I like to do. Yes, that was Wild Thornberry's fan art. As you can see, yes, it is Debbie. So yeah, you can do this fan art. You can do reimaginations. I really like doing nonfiction comics. So I did comics on the importance of voting and ways that you can make an event out of it. I did comics on activists, and I also did, I do funny comics as well. Sometimes I'll just have an idea and I'll just draw it out. Like this middle one here is about when my husband brought the wrong toothpaste home, and it kind of plagued us for a week. I mean, we would go to the grocery store and get our regular groceries, and I would be thinking to myself, should I just go and get Aquafresh instead? Is this a first world problem? I should just suck it up and use the toothpaste that I like. And then later on in bed, he's like, you know, I don't like our toothpaste. And I was like, you know what? Me neither. And so we found a way to get rid of our toothpaste by asking our friends in our group chat, does anyone use Colgate? And so we gave it to them as a housewarming gift. So yeah, you can make comics on anything. They don't have to be well done. As you can see, this is a mess, but it's funny and it gets the idea across, which is the point. And so Heart of the City is what I'm working on currently. It is a strip that's been going on for about 20 years. Mark Tatuli was doing this strip and he created these characters. The main boy character, his name is Dean, and he is actually based off of Mark Tatuli's son, who is married to someone named Christina, which is my wallet name. And Christina worked with Ivy, my creative partner, who I did archival quality with. So comics is a small community, more than you think it is. So archival quality was my first book. I did pieces in anthologies like Deadbeats, Elements Fire, Mine. I do pieces for D&D supplements. I also made my own mini comic on Encyclopedia Brown because I love that series and I wanted to elevate it and bring it to 2020. So I just made it myself. And I think the retelling aspect of Encyclopedia Brown is one of the reasons why my editor at Andrews McMeel liked my stuff. They were like, oh, okay, so you can redo a character well. And I was like, yes, I can. Editorially, I've done things all over the place, from magazines to single issue comics to graphic novels to adaptations of gumshoe novels to serial magazines, Tapas, which is, scrollable digital web comics. I also work with people on their pitches. So World's Strongest was a pitch that someone came in with and I gave them notes. They went back and redid it and then they got it picked up, So those are the kind of really cool things that I can do. I did the single issue series for Mad Cave Studios, Bountiful Garden. That one is actually currently ongoing on shelves now. So if you want to go and look that up, you can. I also work with individual, smaller publishers on graphic novels. And I work with mentees as well. I did a mentorship program with SVA this year where I helped a student take their story idea and create a full-fledged pitch to start sending out to people to get representation as well. So that was me. So you know what my background is before we start getting into the nitty-gritty of being a business person. So let's just, any questions before I get into that? Thank you. All right, let's just get right into it. And then if we have questions later, we can ask. Okay, so one of the things I always tell people, you should always have a contract, no matter what it is for. I mean, there are times when I would hire, I hired my friend Kat to do editorial on a mini comic that I'm working on currently. And even though we're homies, we talk all the time, I see her every weekend, I still make sure that we had a contract because it's just a great habit, Where can I get a contract? So what I like to do is go to this website called google.com. And I just type in a contract that I need. And then I take what I want from everything I see and put it together. And that's my contract. One of the things that you should also know is what boilerplate is. So boilerplate is something that is always going to be in a contract. For example, if you're working for DC and you're doing a Batman comic, their boilerplate is going to say that Batman belongs to DC Comics. There's nothing you can do to get that out of there, which is why I always recommend that when you start into a contract with anybody, whether it's a homie or if it's a big company like DC Comics, always ask them what is in your boilerplate, because you want to be able to know what kind of things can you negotiate on and what kind of things you just kind of have to live with, And that sort of thing can be kind of a make it or break it. I've seen plenty of people not sign a contract because they didn't like the boilerplate. And the boilerplate can be anything from work for hire, we own everything, to if you don't want to be credited for this book, will use some other person's name or something. You know, there's always so many weird things that people put in their boilerplate that I always recommend. You should just ask, what's something that I need to know straight up I'm not going to be able to change? Which leads into negotiation. Anyone can negotiate. You do not have to be a lawyer. You don't need to have an agent to negotiate. You can advocate for yourself. And in fact, people expect you to advocate for yourself. If someone gives you a contract and it's just like, sign it and get it back to me tomorrow, like, that doesn't work. You're going to have to take some time to read through it to see if there's anything that you want to change or make better for all parties. If you're nervous about negotiation, then you can always ask a friend to really think about, like, how should I talk about this? Or if you have an agent, your agent should be the one to do it. But there are also really a lot of opportunities for people locally. I don't know how it is in Canada, but I know here in the United States, I would say most states have a VLAA, which is a Volunteer Lawyers and Accountants for the Arts program. So it's basically just a group of people that will have volunteered their time to help you as an artist with your legal and your accounting. So if you're on the fence about it and you don't know how to negotiate something, find out if there's a VLAA near you, and maybe there's someone that can help. In your contracts, you also really want to talk about the copyright. You want to know what is it that you own and what is it that the company owns. Because if you're doing something that's work for hire, so that means the company hires you to do the work, that means that you don't own this work. If you do the art for Batman, that means that the art that you did belongs to DC. So you are going to have to ask them if you want to sell those original pages, if you did it traditionally, or even to sell pages, you know, that you've put out as a print. You'll need to ask them if that's okay, and very likely they'll say no. But you don't know. That's why you should always ask in the negotiation phase. But also, if you are working for yourself and you want to make sure that your own work is under your copyright, that's where it can go in the contract as well. You can say all things that we discuss is mine. I know I put a copyright clause in my contracts as an editor. I basically will say, like, all the stuff that we talk about, your stories, none of that belongs to me. That's all you. So if I give you a suggestion and you love it and you use it, I'm not going to come knocking on your door for royalty statements. You know, that's just how it is. I want my clients to feel comfortable that they can talk to me about their story and not have to worry about someone stealing it. So that sort of thing is also really, really helpful. Specificity in your contracts. If it's not clear what's in it, someone can take advantage of you, you know? Payment terms. I always say that payment either needs to be in like Venmo, PayPal, or direct deposit, you know, that sort of thing that's like instant, because sometimes I don't really like waiting for checks. And sometimes checks get lost in the mail and I don't want to really deal with that. So those are my payment terms. So think about what kind of payment terms you would like in your contracts. When I say client and payment information, I'm talking about who are you working with? There's plenty of times where you'll be working with a publisher, and let's say you're working with editor Megan, and Megan is like, I need you to turn this page into a completely different color scheme. And then a week later, editor Steenz comes in and is like, why did you change it? So it's like, you want to make sure you know who you work with. And if in the contract it says that you work with editor Megan, you can very easily say, sorry, editor Steenz, my contract does not say that I have to tell you anything, you know? So obviously be very, you know, kind about it and professional, but, you know, you want to make sure you know who is your point of contact, because you don't want too many cooks. It can really destroy the stew. Revisions. Now that is something that you really have to think about. Not only how many revisions you'll do for the price, but what revisions are to you. So like if someone say, I think her hair needs to be a little different because I don't think she would normally wear it in a ponytail, looks too similar to another character. So the revision for me would be, what if I gave her, you know, 2 ponytails on each side? What if I took the ponytails out completely and I just gave her short hair or something? You know, here are some options. Those are revisions I can work with. a revision that I cannot work with, I don't like this, start over. And so that's a revision to someone else. So it's very good for you to discuss that with whomever you're working with is what are the revisions? How many are you going to allow? And then if you have to go more than the amount that you put in there. So if you have to do more than 3 revisions, how much do they have to pay you to do more? And if you put that sort of thing in a contract, not only will it show the person that you're working with that you know what you're doing, but it also makes them realize, oh, okay, I'm working with a professional here. This isn't just, some teenager in their mom's basement, like, I'll make a comic for you. This is a teenager in their mom's basement who has come to a workshop and knows what they're talking about. So another thing that I didn't put on here that it might be helpful for some people is a kill fee. Because of the nature of publishing, sometimes your book could get canceled out of nowhere, or I had a situation where the artist on the book couldn't finish. They couldn't finish. They're like, sorry. So I had to figure out what I was going to do in that situation, because you still want to make sure that the work gets done. But in a case, if you're the artist and they decide, never mind, we don't want to do this project, you've already created like 5 pages worth of stuff. You want to make sure you get compensated for your work. So whether it's like $50 or something, or half of the amount that they agreed upon. I know for me, one of the things that I have is that's kind of like a kill fee is if they decide that they no longer want to work with me as their editor, if they decide like we actually just don't have the time to work on this project anymore, they either have to let me know a week ahead of time, or they have to pay me for an hour of my time, because an hour of my time is going to be spent getting rid of that calendar off of my Google Calendar. I want to be able to get some kind of compensation for it. So kill fees are also very important. Okay, so we did talk about copyright for a little bit, but I do want to talk about it a little bit more. So what is copyright? It is a line that shows that you own the intellectual property of what you have created. So let's say I draw on a napkin a piece of toast with a mustache. We'll call him Mustache Toast. That copyright is mine. I didn't have to go to a copyright office or anything. The second I make something tangible and put it down on paper, I have the copyright. I have the copyright until 70 years after I die. So I don't have to put in, the little C with the circle around it on my napkin. We just happen to have the rule, at least here in the States, that if you draw it and you put it on paper and it's tangible and we can see it, you have the copyright for it. You can absolutely sue somebody for making mustache toast because they saw you at Starbucks drawing on your napkin, So who can claim copyright? Anybody. So you don't have to be of a certain age. I know some people believe that you have to be like 18 in order to claim that copyright. Not the case. Again, if you created it, that's yours. So what works are and aren't protected. The kind of things that are not protected are like intangible things. So if you have an idea, but you've never spoken it to someone, you've never written it down, you've never typed it in your computer, you can't claim copyright on it because there's no physical evidence that we can really use to show that it's your idea. There are some things that you can't copyright that are like obvious. You can't really copyright shapes. They're just like they get used everywhere. You can't be like, but this circle is with 5-point, brush, so it's mine. No, it's a shape. You can't copyright it. You can't copyright shapes. You can't copyright numbers, things that are like super, super, super generalized. But mustache toast absolutely is protected. And that protection is for the entirety of my life plus 70 years. So it's the same thing for everybody else. I do know that Disney has been on quite the crusade to get rid of that because a lot of their titles are coming up to being in the public domain, and they're not a fan. So we'll see what copyright law looks like in the next couple of years, but it could change. But keep that in mind and make sure that you always have your ear to the ground about that sort of thing. Let's say I'm done with Mustache Toast. I'm done taking him to conventions. I'm done, trying to get a movie deal out of Mustache Toast. You know what? editor Megan seems to have a real interest in Mustache Toast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer my copyright of Mustache Toast to Megan by writing it on a second napkin. And so I will sign it, Megan will sign it. Mustache Toast officially is Megan's. Since this call is not recorded, it's not actually Megan's, it's still mine. But in the case that it was recorded, we could possibly get into some litigation here. But you can transfer your copyright to anybody. But again, it just has to be tangible. It's got to be on paper. And you don't have to pay for that sort of thing. Now, copyright registration is stuff that I would recommend if you plan on really selling your work widely. So if you're doing like a zine of all of the rugs that you never bought, you probably can't get you could get a copyright registration, but do you want to? You know, it's 6 pages, it's 2 inches big, and you're not really printing 100 copies. You made like 5 for you and your homies. So like, you can go get it registered, but the question is why? So you have to really think about, okay, what am I going to need like an official registration? Well, if you are making a comic book called Mustache Toast, Return of Mustache, and you really want it to be like a widely sold thing, I would get Mustache Toast registered under your copyright. Because if it goes out and people are like, oh my God, did you hear about Mustache Toast? We need to make it into a movie. You need to be sure that you have the rights to Mustache Toast. And otherwise, someone might come up with a new one that's like Mustache Texas Toast, which like, then you have a problem. So just think about if it's something you're going to put out there and it's going to be used widely, consider copyright. But again, you already have that copyright just by creating it. So this kind of thing, like registration, is really for like legal purposes, if you really think you're going to need that. Okay, more legal stuff. So taxes, accounting, legal. Self-employment taxes, if you are self-employed and you make, okay, well, this is again for United States, but it's probably around the same situation. You have to pay your taxes on the work that you make. So if you work for a regular company, let's say you work for Subway sandwiches, and they have Subways in Canada, right? Great. Okay, so you're working for Subway sandwiches, and at the end of the year, you get a tax document that will say how much you've made for that year, how much was already taken out for taxes, and then you use that to file your taxes. And then when you file it, your local IRS is going to be like, okay, it looks like Subway sandwiches paid Steenz this amount of money, and they already took the money out for taxes. So Steenz, you don't have anything to do. In fact, have some more money. Thank you and goodbye. So that's how it is with a employment job. If you were employed at a business, they automatically take those taxes out. If you were self-employed, who is taking those out? No one. So let's say, Megan has paid me $3,000 to come and talk to you guys, which she hasn't. This is not that lucrative, my goodness. So let's say she paid me $3,000. What I need to do is I need to take a percentage of that $3,000 and put it in savings immediately, because that portion is what the IRS is going to be coming for. I always recommend you put 30% away. The chances that the IRS takes 30% is low. They are really more of like 15 to 20%, especially if you were making under $200,000. But I say 30% just because you never know. There may be something that you could all of a sudden get like a random royalty check that you did not expect to come in. And now you have to like give more to taxes than you had anticipated. Well, if you have savings from when you got that royalty check and you put that away, you're covered. So 30% is very, very safe. And then if, the IRS decides, oh, we don't need 30%, we just need 15, now you have money in your savings. Woo, we love savings. So I definitely recommend putting away 30%. Now, if you were making a considerable amount as a self-employed person, so I'm talking like a full-time job of self-employment, you're going to end up paying a lot. You don't want to pay like a huge chunk at the end of the year, you know? So the best way to do it if you're making quite a bit of money is to do quarterly taxes. So last year combined, my husband and I made like, it was either 80 or 90,000. And I had to pay like 12,000 in total in taxes. Now, would I rather give the IRS $12,000 on February 1st, or would I rather slowly give them $3,000 throughout the year, where I've already have savings, I've been putting savings in as I go? I would rather do it that way, so that by the time you get to the end of the year, you're not like, goodbye, $12,000. You're like, I've already paid, so my taxes are going to look great, you know? So I think quarterly taxes are very helpful. Do they do that in Canada? Okay, great. The thing that you should definitely make sure of is when it's due, because I thought that quarterly taxes meant once every 3 months, right? No, it's not. It's actually what you make in January, February, and March, you pay in April. What you make in April and May, you pay in June. What you make in June, July, August, September, you pay in November. And then October, November, December, you pay in January. It makes no sense. Why would you do 3, 2, 4, 3? So I don't know. I do not work for the IRS, so I guess I can really only scream to everyone else. But make sure you know when those are due. Also, when you're self-employed. So let's go back to another example. Megan has paid me $3,000 for this. I'm going to want to get a form that says how much money I received from Megan LLC. So here it's the 1099 NEC form. NEC stands for non-employee compensation. So it's a form that you will get automatically from any company that has paid you over $600 or whatever the range is there. So if it's $600 or less, technically, you don't have to report it. But I recommend reporting everything that you make, because it's like, legally, that's what you should do. But if you don't have a 1099 for it, okay, great. So hopefully I don't get thrown in the clink for this. But I definitely recommend, if you are getting those forms from those people, just like I'm going to show you how I organize my income in a little bit, so you can see how easy it's going to be for you to go back and find out who needs to give you a 1099. And it can be very easy, because a company is legally obliged to do that. You know, the company has to tell the IRS, oh yeah, we, Megan LLC, paid Steenz $3,000, so you better get those taxes from them. And that's what that form is, because Megan LLC is actually going to get a return on what they paid me, because they put it in that form to say, hey, this is the money exchanged. So if a business pays you more than that threshold, like $600, and they don't want to give you a W-2, something is wrong. Or they don't want to give you a 1099, that means that there's some shading dealings there. You should always get that form. Whether it's a W-2 or a 1099, make sure you have your tax forms so that you can do your taxes. I do my taxes on TurboTax, which I know I can get it done also for free on like irs.gov or something, but it's not as easy. And I like things to be easy, and I will gladly pay for things to be easier for me. So that's what I do. I use TurboTax, but it works. I have never had a problem with the IRS. Another thing to keep in mind is that the IRS, or whoever it is in Canada, they're not going, the CRA, as much as I know, unless you're making like mad bucks, like $200,000 or more, the CRA is not going to come knocking on your door, okay? They're not going to be like, you missed $50. We're taking you to jail immediately. Pack a bag. No, they're not going to do that. What they're going to do is they're going to send you a letter that says, Steenz, you dum-dum, you switched 2 numbers on accident, which I've done. So you owe us like $60. And I'm like, oh, stupid. Okay. And I send them the $60 and it's done, So, don't be scared of the CRA unless you're making a lot of money, in which case get an accountant at that point, you know. I always say to itemize and record your expenses. There are a lot of things that can be considered an expense that you are not aware of. Well, for one, if you work in a home office, you get to get a portion off because it's your home office. And I guess they reward that sort of thing. Also, whatever is in your area of business. So I work in comics. So all the comics I buy get expensed. Even if it's a Star Trek ship, which I have too many of, I might end up writing for Star Trek. I don't know. I'm a cartoonist. Who knows what could happen? I'm expensing it. So yeah, a lot of cartoonists expense those comic book trips. I expense my internet because I do these over the internet and I'm getting paid for it. So it's a part of my business. I actually expensed Animal Crossing in 2020 because I did an interview with the Comics Beat within Animal Crossing. Like, they came to my island, I gave them an island tour, and we talked about comics. And I was like, Nintendo, you're going in my taxes, bro. So really, you can get as creative as you want. And honestly, like, if you use programs like TurboTax and stuff, they're gonna try and get you as much money back as possible. You know, so they're gonna be like, what about snacks? Don't you eat? Meal money. You can expense that too. I have yet to expense my grocery list. I'm like a baby when it comes to expensing things. I like slowly add things to it every year. Like, can I do this? Can I do that? So this year is going to be my first year expensing my comic books, and I'm so excited. I'm going to get some money back. Well, no, I don't actually get any money back because I make so much money as a freelancer. It's more so I'm going to be able to pay less. Okay, so I talked about where you can get help with a VLAA. They really are everywhere. And, you know, getting a one-on-one conversation with a lawyer, programs, workshops, mailing lists, tax prep, I mean, all this stuff that you feel like you need, it is available to you, you know? And I find that a lot of artists, businesses, things that help the art world are very into helping creators be better business owners, you know? So think about that. Okay, so this is how I track my income. Yes, these numbers are real. So please don't put that out there. But I keep it organized by what exactly I'm doing. So I keep it separate with editorial, with comics illustration, with class visits, all this other kind of stuff. I organize so that the second I get it, I put it in the spreadsheet so that by the end of the month, I can add it all up and we're kosher. I recommend putting together a spreadsheet like this because it's also really, really helpful. The other day, I realized that I made like $1,000 less than any other month. And I was like, no wonder I feel so broke. I'm actually behind because like my editorial, I wasn't getting what I thought from editorial. So definitely make sure you have an income tracker and then an expense tracker as well. So these are some of the stuff that I normally expense: phone bills, the interest on my mortgage, internet, printer. I bought a printer, so that's definitely an office supply. I know it has office meals on there, but I'm like too scared to actually expense it still. So 2021 though, office meals are going in. Also, if you have a website, if you use Google Drive, if you have a Clip Studio subscription, I go to occupational and physical therapy because I want to be making comics for the rest of my life. I put that in there as well. If you have an agent and they take a portion out of how much you get paid, the portion that they took out, you can also expense. So it's kind of, I mean, it's not totally like you're getting free money, but they're helping you out. Yeah, so there you go. I did it.
Cool. Well, this is perfect because our meeting is about to end. So I'm just going to pop a link into the chat. And that will be our new spot. If we all just want to file in there.
Yeah, great. Okay. I will see you guys shortly.
See you on the other side.
Okay.